Hello, and thank you for stopping by. Today I'm going to be working on this brake line leak on a 2000 Chevy Blazer. This is a short brake line on the rear wheel that goes from the T right over to the wheel. Now, if this wasn't so rusty, this wouldn't be that bad of a job. And the way I found this leak, in a previous video, I rebuilt the caliper, and after rebuilding the caliper and installing the new brake pads, I was bleeding the line, and I just couldn't get a solid pedal. I kept having the brake pumped and adding fluid to it, and it just wouldn't hold. Well, after moving the vehicle, I found the puddle on the ground, and when I came up, looked at this point, this is why I couldn't get a firm pedal. I have this leak over here. Now, I don't know how long that leak was there or why it decided to go now, but I'm very fortunate that this leak started in my driveway, and I found it in my driveway before I was on the road with it. You can see the rust that's on here. So before I do anything else, I'm going to coat this with penetrating fluid on this nut here and the nut by the brake. Then while this is soaking, I'm going to go get a new brake line. Once I get the new brake line, I'll be back and we'll continue with the removal of this old brake line and the installation of the new one. Right, the brake line got delivered. Let's take a look. I usually pick up the brake line out of the local stores, but this time I went for the copper nickel, and the price I paid at Amazon was significantly less than what the local shops were charging. Now, this is the first time I'm using this line. To me, this looks like copper tubing, but it's supposed to be rust proof, and I only need about a 12-inch section, but at some point I'm probably going to have to do the whole brake line from the back all the way up to the master cylinder, and I'm ready for it. Besides the brake line, included in the price were these fittings. Now, what's nice about this, they gave all different sizes. You can see we have a wide fitting here, and the threads are wider threads. A narrow one, the threads are closer together. I have to say, no matter what I have under this vehicle, I have to have a set of these fittings that fit. Push come to shove, I can always throw the old ones out and use them, but I should have a pair in here that fit. I want to point out, if you're going with tubing like this, you're going to have to flare the ends. You're going to have to make this kind of flare on the end. I'm going to show you how to do this later on in the video. If you're just repairing this one short line, you could buy various lengths of tubing already flared with the fittings on them. This was a leftover from a previous job I've done, and it was about 2 inches too short. Otherwise I would have just used this line for now, and I wouldn't have had to wait. Now, another thing, the original brake line, I don't have it off yet, but this is similar to it, has this spring on it, and this spring is supposed to protect the brake line from pebbles hitting it, maybe rattling against the frame. It's the spot where it might be loose. But what you can see, if the camera's picking it up, it also holds a lot of dirt and grime in there. Not changing your brake fluid, and the corrosion on the outside, these things eventually they go. And this is the typical steel. And as I mentioned, first time I'm using this. If you're making this repair, I want to show you the tools that you'll need. The first item, you're going to need some brake line wrenches. If you don't have them, you may be able to get by without them, but the way these work, you have this opening, and the wrench can slide over the line and onto the fitting. And the advantage to this wrench over a crescent wrench or a regular wrench is that it captures more of the fitting to prevent it from stripping out. If your fittings are in good shape, you'll be able to do it with a regular wrench, but if they're rusted and whatnot, you're going to need these. If this is a job you always plan on doing yourself, if you're going to bleed your brake lines in the future, these wrenches aren't that expensive to pick up a set. Next, you'll need a tubing bender. You can use one like this. This is one. Come on, get down. Next, you'll need a tubing bender. There's all kinds of varieties of these benders. This is one type. Here's another one that I've used more often than not. Very basic. There's another one. I know there's a shadow over here. I'm trying to work out of the shadow, but it's a tough time of day and I can't move the vehicle around. It's all jacked up and everything already. Sorry about that. And if you're not working with preformed lines, you will need a tubing cutter. You have this size, and I have a little red one that if you're in a tight spot and you're working underneath the car, it's a lot easier to use than this. But if you're just cutting the lines, this will work fine. After that, you will need a flaring tool. This is the kit, and when I'm ready to flare the line, I'll be back to show you how this works. So now let's go bottom side and see. Oh, you may need a set of picks, and I'll show you why in a minute. You may also need a pair of channel locks or pliers. Depending on what you have underneath, every situation's a little different, but these are a definite. Let me get underneath and get this job started. And when I went to loosen this the other day, it started dripping a little bit. I believe I cracked the line. I don't think it was leaking from the nut. And I checked it. Oh, that's something I didn't mention earlier. You want to make sure that the brake fluid reserve is full. You don't want to drain it out, and then you'll have to bleed. You'll have to bleed everything. You might even have to bleed the ABS system. You can see it stopped. Now, what I was mentioning before, these fittings are different sizes because some of these adapters, they're thicker than others. What I'm going to do now is to remove this fitting and this other fitting up here. If they do not move, what I'm going to do is just cut them off on both ends, and I'll use a socket on it. The advantage of using a socket on it is that you could put the socket itself on, tap it a little bit with a hammer. It might break up the rust, and then you have a little bit more leverage. And the socket will have a better grip on this than the line wrench. The line wrench is when you're preserving this or putting the other one on. All right, now let's see. I'm going to get this camera out of the way. Now this fluid may start dripping out fast. If it does, I'm going to go inside the vehicle and I'm going to press the brake pedal down and hold it there with some kind of stick or rod. That'll prevent it from dripping all the way out. This vehicle's on a slant going to the front, so I might not get as much drip as I normally would. But if this takes me any length of time and this is starting to drip out from over here, here's the main line coming into this one. If it starts dripping out over here, then I'm going to have to do that not to bleed it all the way down. If I had somebody with me, I would just have them keep pouring brake fluid into it, because if you noticed earlier, that brake fluid was pretty dirty and it should be changed. So just be a way of changing it out. So let me get this started, and once I have this disconnected, I'll be pulling the line out. We'll be measuring it up against the new line, and we'll be flaring the new line for the fittings. One other thing what I want to point out, you can see there's rust over here, but the rust that's causing the problem why this won't spin, because this should spin loose on this tubing, is the rust on the outside. That's why I said you may need these picks. I'm going to try to scrape some of this rust off, maybe just enough to where I can turn this fitting without having major problems. Just another tip. I had some time undoing those fittings. They wouldn't turn on the hose, so what ended up happening, they wouldn't turn on the hose. They had a little company again, and they just snapped. One didn't snap on one side, but the line was turning. So rather than fight it, I just got a hacksaw and cut one side off. But one side came out fairly easy. The other side, it was a challenge to get it out. So this is the line that we're replacing. And what I'm going to do is bend this line to match it with a little extra in there. And it's nice when you have it like this because you can bend it to the shape that it should be. When you have long lengths, sometimes you don't get them out the way they could, and you're kind of piecing it and it's a mess. Now we're going to get into putting the fittings on and flaring this. A couple of things. First, you want to make sure you put the fitting on before you flare it, and you want to make sure this is straight. If this is bent at all and you can't straighten it out, cut it off. If it's bent, you're going to have problems. So slide the fitting on first. And here's the kit. I just want to point out, I have a link for all the equipment that I'm using here and the line, but the last link that I posted has a kit where it has just about everything you need to do this job and several jobs. And today was at $39.95. Today is October 5th, 2023. I don't know when you'll be viewing this video and how long that kit will be available or for what price. But if you don't have these tools and you like to get a kit all together, it's a nice little package for $40. All right, let me open this up. And as you can see, everything just fell out of place. The diameter of the line we're using is 1/8. And if you take a close look at this tool, one side is flat, one side it's like concave, like a funnel. This is the side you'll be working on. And if you don't have this kit and this is a one-time job for you, you can rent these tools from either AutoZone, Advance Auto, or whatever auto shop you might have in your area. Working on the hood of the car, plane just passed. Working on the hood of the car, just try to stay out of the shadow. Now, what we're doing over here, you're going to put the line into the tool. And yeah, it's very specific on how much of this tube is sticking out. And what you're going to use is this fitting. The tube of the line, whichever you prefer, has to stick out to the edge, to the top of this piece right here, to the first rung. See, there's two steps. It has to go up to the first step. So make it even. And close it down. Then lock it down. Make sure it didn't move. No, okay. Okay, it'd be easier to do this after I cut the line, but just in case I lose camera or anything in between, I just want to show you this. Okay, tighten both sides up. Get the anvil. Now, this works a lot easier if you mount this in a vise, but with this thin tubing, it really isn't hard, and this is copper, so it should be even easier. This fitting doesn't go there. It does go a lot smoother when you're working inside. Okay, this piece goes in there, and you get this, tighten it down. It's funny how much longer it takes me to do one of these jobs when I'm trying to make a video of it. Okay, I should turn it around this way so you can see a little better. You see how that's in there? Now you clamp it down. Now you have to be careful when you want to be careful when you're clamping it down. You want it to fit in that funnel, but you don't want to make it so tight that you split it. And if you do split it, don't try using it. Cut that piece off and just do it again. Okay, take this out. Once you have that part done, you put this back in. And you want to make sure it's straight. You want to go in at an angle, it won't come out right, and you'll get a leak. Okay, this is where, if you go too tight, that you'll get the split. I never used this copper before. I mentioned this a couple times. First time I'm using this copper. And I believe it'll be a lot easier when I have to run the long line for the bends, because from the front to the back it goes in and out of the frame of the car. Okay, release this one, release this one, open out, and out it comes. Let me show you what it should look like. Everything's sliding down. Okay, get a good view of that. Okay, and then this fitting will come up and it forms a seal when you're connected. Now I'm going to bend this line to match this, and then I'll cut it off. I'll put the fitting on the other side, and I'll flare the other side. If you have simple bends like this, I've done repairs like this before without any of the bending tools, where I used a large socket or a piece of PVC pipe to make the bend, especially with the steel. I don't know how this will be. This seems like it's a lot softer. With the steel, you have to be careful. If you try to bend it with a little bit of a bend, you might be able to get away with your fingers, but too much, you'll get a kink in it and you can't use it. So I'm going to go off camera now. I'm going to make these bends, and I'll be back to show you the flaring on the other end. I just got out from underneath the car, and I tried bending it to the shape the other one was in, but it just didn't get in there right. So what I did, I screwed this part into one side, and I just adjusted the bends until this side could reach where the other fitting has to go in. I actually cut this a little on the long side, so if I had to trim it down, I had the room. I'm glad I did. Anyway, once you cut this tubing, you want to deburr it on the inside. Okay. This is a cutter that I use when I do my plumbing work, and it has this little reamer over here. If you use the little red cutter, it doesn't have that. You could just get a reaming tool, or even a razor blade will clean that up. All right. Don't forget to put your fitting on. Make sure it's facing the right way. And we just copy what we did before. Again, if you're doing this on a vise, it's a little easier. If it's the first time you're doing it, I suggest you mount this into a vise. It just gives you a little bit more control over what you're doing. And I lost my fitting. I'm doing it outside in the driveway where the truck is parked up on the ramps, and trying to video at the same time. It's a little fun. I always clamp down the side where the tubing is. And on some of your vehicles, you might have a 1/4 inch. I doubt you go any bigger. You might have this 3/8 of an inch when you're doing some transmission coolant from the radiator to the transmission that was on a different vehicle. And when you're using the steel, that's a little tough to flare out. You got to give it a little oomph. So we'll measure it again. Wow, look at that. Right on the money, first shot. Tighten it up. Okay. Put your little foot, make sure this didn't move. Okay, that's all right. If it's a little proud, and when I say a little, I'm talking like a fingernail, thickness of a fingernail. It's a little proud, it's okay. A little short, no good. You need the material. Okay, get the tool in there. All right.
Hello.
Hey, Jay.
So.
Okay, you want to make sure this is straight, and you can see now this is cocked to one side. Okay, so straighten it out. Okay, now it's straight, and just repeat the process. it out. Okay, and again, make sure it's straight. A little snug. Bring it down. When these brake lines are new, even these steel ones, they're a little bit more pliable than once they've been on for a while. Okay, this looks like it's sitting okay. Well, that looks all right. I'm going to check the footage later, see what it looks like. But now, there may be a time, it doesn't happen often, but from that tool clamping over here, you may get like heavy burrs, and this doesn't fit right. You want to make sure that this fitting comes right up to that lip, because if it doesn't, fluid will pass by it and you'll have a leak. If that should happen and you can't get this tight, if you could get some valve compound, the compound that you use when you grind the valves down, just put a little bit around here and then put this piece on, go back and forth a few times, wipe it off, see if it goes. If it doesn't go, do it again. Keep doing it until you smooth it out, and that'll fit right up to the top. But we don't have that problem here today. Everything's looking okay. This side fits nice, right up to the edge. This side, this is a good fit on this side as well. I'm going underneath now to install this. Once I have it done, I'll show you what it looks like. The lure line is in. It was an easy spot to get to. See the difference between this new line and this line over here? This line was changed, I think I changed that 3 years ago, and it's already starting to corrode. That's the typical steel line that you get. So we'll see how well this goes. I have Phyllis inside the truck right now. She's going to step on the brakes to make sure we don't have any leaks. And let me back up a little bit over here. Okay, Phil. Yeah, step on it. Okay, that's good. Nothing. Pump it a few times. Take it up and put it down. How's it feel?
Not spongy.
Not spongy? Yeah, because it's not leaking out the back now. Okay. Okay, that's good, Phil. No, that's good. Thank you. Okay, well.
Want to leave the key in?
Yeah, leave the key in it, huh? Well, Phyllis pumped the brakes a couple times. It's dry, nothing's leaking. Looks good. It's not touching anything. So if it should rattle a little bit, it's not going to rub. Everything looks good on it. And I have to say, that's a wrap. If you found this video useful or even entertaining, let me know. Post it in the comments down below. Give it a like. It surely helps when you give it a like and make a comment. Good or bad, let me know what you're thinking. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe. Hit that Josie button. And not to miss my new videos as I upload them, be sure to ring that bell. Until next time, safe driving.